all three of you, and happy election eve. It's nice to have you with me. Kevin, I'm going to begin with you. We only have to go back to Republican speakers, John Boehner, who dealt with the Tea Party, and then, of course, Paul Ryan, who had to deal with the Freedom Caucus. And it was a lot of work. It was troublesome for them and difficult. I wonder if you can put it in perspective for the Speaker of the House, if it's Kevin McCarthy, how it's going to be to deal with a MAGA bloc in Congress.
Yeah, well, this is not a new phenomenon. I mean, I think political power and the ability to manage political power is always dependent on leaders' ability to manage these minority factions inside their own conference or inside their own caucus. I think the big challenge here for Kevin McCarthy is, and you alluded to it earlier, is that so many of these MAGA Republicans, and you only named about 6 or 8, but if you look at the House Freedom Caucus, which represents, probably the most conservative of all the House Republicans, there's probably close to 40, even close to 40 or 50 members. So if you're looking at that vote count to how do you get to 218 to pass a piece of legislation in the House, those numbers figure very prominently. The other challenge is that so many of those members are driven by cultural issues. They want to focus on issues like us versus them. They want to hold Democrats accountable. They want to really confront the Biden White House when so many of the challenges that we face, and one of the reasons that we're probably going to have a political mandate coming out of this election as Republicans, is that the mandate was driven by economic issues, inflation, gas prices, jobs. And so there is a big gap that Kevin McCarthy is going to have to manage between the expectations of his members and the expectations of the electorate.
Okay, so, Lieutenant Governor, there are some who say that a strong MAGA coalition is inevitable, that there is going to be a very serious component of our government that has a MAGA agenda. But those same people who are critics say they may not be able to govern, and they may fizzle, and ultimately their movement may die. It's one thing to be energized and to get those seats, and it's another thing to actually govern the country. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the MAGA movement that happened 6 years ago, we saw what it did for the country. We saw what it did for the economy. We saw what it did for the border. The same things that Donald Trump really worked on 6 years ago and through his whole 4 years as president is what those MAGA Republicans, we're not talking, there's always a few extremists on both sides. But for the most part, MAGA Republicans are people that want the border secure. They want the economy to function well again. They don't want continued over-giving of the government, which has caused inflation to happen the way it has. They want basic, core, fundamental, conservative, or responsible government. They don't want crazy things that the other side tries to paint them as. MAGA means make America great again. It means they want secure borders. They want a good economy. They want the basic things that we believe in as Americans. And that's why you see so many Democrats.
But what about the cultural issues, Lieutenant Governor? What about those? Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to jump in there just with the cultural issues that Kevin was just talking about. I understand those policy issues, but then there's that otherism stuff, too, that tends to be very divisive and really kind of puts paralysis in governing.
Yes, and that's why the Republicans are going to do so well this year, because the other side has gone wokeism. You go down the list, and it's so un-American and so what not mainstream America wants. They don't want thousands upon thousands of people flooding in their border every day. They don't want the school teachers making decisions that parents ought to be making. These are core fundamental things that have driven people to the Republican Party that aren't really Republicans, that are fed up to it. They've had enough, and that's why you're seeing this movement. And the movement's going to be much bigger than anybody on TV can even imagine tomorrow.
So I wonder, in the same vein that you say that the far left wing of the Democratic Party, the woke, the squad, drove a lot of Democrats to the Republican Party. And Johanna, I'll get you to weigh in on this. Do you think that if there is a large contingent of MAGA Republicans that, as Kevin said, are very culturally focused, that could have the same effect on Republicans? They could be that same squad wing on the right side of politics that will drive a lot of Republicans over to, the center or to Democrats in the exact same fashion.
Well, and I guess to Andre's point, I do think actually a lot of Republicans absolutely believe that we need to move America forward and do these things together. But there's a weird wing of the MAGA movement.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.